Hi, everyone. I'm Kathy Carlton Willis, and today I've been invited to talk with you all about the Novelist as speaker. And I've been a speaker trainer for over 20 years. I even wrote the book on it, The Ultimate Speaker's Guide, Practical Tips, Tools, and Takeaways. And I'll be sharing some of the ideas from this book with you today. If you ever need any help with your speaker career, just let me know and we can see if we can work something out to help you get on your way, whether you're beginning or if you're advanced in your skills. So we all know that speaking gives us that opportunity for back of the room book sales. And if you have a book out, that is one of the best ways that you can market that book. So it's time to evaluate your speaking craft. That way you can work up better programs and offer them to those event planners. That's all what we all want if we're speakers, right? No matter your skill level, consider new techniques to deliver a riveting presentation. And I'll help you identify ways to stand out when event planners consider their options from the sea of speakers available today. And every year it seems like there's more and more speakers out there, and maybe fewer opportunities unless we make the way for those opportunities to happen. And that's what I want to help you do. So first, let's talk about choosing your speaker topics. I've been asked how in the world do you come up with the programs that you want to offer, and how do people just relate to those programs, because you want them to pick a program that is best for their audience. And that's why we try to make sure we come up with these titles and speaker blurbs that really grab their attention and get them to wanting more. So first, I want you to start by evaluating your heart core passions. These are the topics that excite you and energize you, because you know those topics that dull and drain you. I don't want you to work on those, even if they're popular topics. I had one of my clients say, "Oh, Kathy, since I'm a woman speaker, I need to offer tips and programs on hospitality, but that just really isn't my thing. I'm into apologetics and I love talking about those strong topics." And she was trying to force something to work that wasn't with her personality. So the first thing I want you to do is ask yourself, what gets me jazzed? Because here's the thing, even if you're nervous, even if you don't have all the best speaking skills developed yet, if you're passionate about it, that will be what draws the audience to you. And so that's why I want you to focus on those topics that really get you going. Because if they get your heart rate going, they're going to really resonate with that audience. And that's what we want. Your topics will align with your tagline and your branding. So if you've developed a branding strategy, then develop those topics that go with that. I'm known as God's Grin Gal, so I try to develop topics that go with my brand. They will also fulfill your mission and purpose. That's what keeps us going and keeps us passionate, when we know that it fits right along with our purpose. So what are some of the topics from your novels that can be fleshed out as nonfiction speaking programs? A lot of the clients I work with who write novels write really important messages into those novels. One of my clients deals with domestic violence issues. Another one talks about bravery through battles like marital problems or illness or financial problems. If you'll look at your novels, in those stories, there are some true to life situations, and you can become the go-to person on those topics. And that's what I want you to do. Then you need to package your programs. Think up 5 programs you could present if requested. Now, if you're just starting out, you haven't developed those programs yet, and that is okay. But for now, if you could have 5 programs, I found that it's good to offer a menu to those event planners so they have something to choose from, even if they ask you to develop a different topic customized for their event. Start out with 5 programs. Don't fully develop the actual messages, though, until you get an invitation to give that message, because you may find that they give you some input that causes you to need to change that message anyway. So for now, just come up with the titles and then like a paragraph blurb that would describe what they're getting when they get that program. Can you do that? It will be like a menu. Make sure they're inviting and alluring, just like a menu for a restaurant is. What would make that event planner choose that program? Make sure your programs are relevant, timely, and fitting for your target audiences. And here's a tip. Make sure your target audiences are the kind that like to buy the kind of book you write. That's pretty important too. Include previous speeches that you have received positive feedback on. You know those work for you. They're tried and true. So why not put those on your menu? Then the event planners can look over your speaker portfolio and decide if any of those programs will work for them, or also offer to customize a new program specifically for that event. I've come up with some doozies because a lot of times, especially for retreats, they have this really fun idea, but it's harder to develop into, especially if they want Bible studies done. One of them was on mysteries, which here you go, you're a novelist, so maybe you write mysteries. A lot of the events love to do sort of a mystery themed event with a whodunit game and skits and all those fun things, but they want you to bring about a program that will fit with it, either a general program or a faith-based program. And you can do it. You can do it to make it relevant and fit and have that fun that they're looking for as well. One of the other things you need to do after you've developed the titles and blurbs for your programs is to request endorsements, because it's just the way it is. Event planners who don't know you are not going to invite you to speak for their events unless you have some pretty heavy duty endorsements. So when leaders compliment your program, thank them and ask if they'd mind writing the very same sentiment they just said, just ask them to put it down on paper or text it to you so that you could use it for your marketing materials. A letter length reference on official letterhead from them, that's nice to have, but even those short blurbs combined together on one promo page are beneficial. I love to have you develop a speaker kit that one of the pages will be your endorsement page. And this is where you would put these blurbs. Get quotes from not only the leaders, but also the attendees. If someone comes to the back of the room when you greet them after the program is over and they tell you how special a certain point was to them, be sure to write that down, ask their permission to share it. Some of them you'll just want to put audience member or retreat attendee, or maybe their first name, or perhaps they'd be willing to give you their full name. Ask for many endorsements because you can select the best ones. If you only ask for 3 and you need 3, some may not deliver, some may not really land what you needed. So ask for more than you need. Give them some endorsement samples so that will help them see what you're looking for. And they may even ask if they can reword one of the samples you've given them. It just helps them out because they really have no idea. They perhaps have never written an endorsement before. So help them see what you're looking for. When event planners read what others think of your speaking, they won't feel they are taking such a big risk to invite you to speak. So how do you use those endorsements? I want to see you putting them on your website page. Have a page of endorsements for your books, for your speaking, for anything else that you're doing. Perhaps you're a coach like I am. Whatever you do, if you have an endorsement for it, you're more likely to get them to commit to what you're asking them in your call to action. Have an endorsement sheet in that speaker kit that we've talked about, a few statements on other promotional materials. How about using them in your media kits? If you put out a press release, things like that, you can always use these endorsements. So think about different ways you might use them. And maybe you'll pitch to be a speaker like I am right now for a writers conference. You can even use some of the endorsements for that kind of a pitch. Third, we want to get the word out. We've got together our package, we've got together some endorsements. So how do we get the word out so that we get those bookings? Event planners select speakers for their events based on these things. Word of mouth, that's still the number one way we sell books. It's still the number one way we get speaking events. Word of mouth is where it's at. Social media has become the new word of mouth. Used to be women would meet across the fence when they hung their laundry out to dry, and they would talk about what their favorite detergent would be for laundry or what the gossip was in town. And now women are not hanging their laundry out, but we're meeting and others are meeting, not just women, through social media, and we spread the word that way. We can spread good news that way and not so good news that way. We've all seen that. We also do that in the form of reviews. You want that for your novels, but an endorsement is another type of review. And then referrals. So if you go to one event, you do a great job for them. Ask that leader, do you know anyone else who's looking for an event speaker or have something similar? Would you be willing to refer me for that event? Hearing the speaker previously. So it's great if you have some event planners who just quite haven't made the commitment yet, but they're thinking about you, invite them to another event where you're speaking so they can hear you. There are speaker bureaus you can sign up for and online sites where you can sign up as a speaker, and then they would put your bio, your blurbs, your endorsements, those kinds of things. So that's a great way to get your word out. And then also search engines. You know that if people are going to Google your name, they're going to find what you have to offer. They read the speaker's published pieces. So if you're writing novels, be sure you're writing articles as well, because people are reading those. They might be in newsletters, they might be on a blog, a website, an online publication, an in-print publication, all of those ways people are finding out about you. I know when I was an event planner, I would read an article by someone and think to myself, this person would make a great speaker. I'm going to check their bio. Sure enough, it says they're a speaker. I'm going to contact them. So that's just one more way event planners decide who they might like to invite to speak. And also hearing the speaker as a media guest. How many times have you heard someone on the radio or on other media? And because of that, they've become an event planner's joy. You know, you want to invite them to speak. You are just so excited about what they're excited about, that passion that you've picked up on during that radio interview. So be sure you're getting those media events happening too, where you're the guest. And even when you're the host, on either side of it, event planners will listen and consider booking you. So what are some of the promotional materials that you need so that you can spread the word? First, decide if you want printed materials or virtual, and really you can have both. For print, decide if you want a rack card. If you're wondering what a rack card is, let me see, I've got a few here, all different kinds. A rack card basically is a card that fits in a rack. That's pretty simple, right? And I found on some of the online printing places like Vistaprint, rack cards are actually cheaper in the long run than a bookmark. You get so much mileage for it. It's almost indestructible, whereas a one sheet piece of paper that's front and back can get folded up and just doesn't look so pretty after the very first time it's been handed to someone. And these rack cards really hold up, so I like them. They still can be used as a bookmark. They fit in a business size envelope if you're mailing them, or they can fit in a folder. So there's just so many ways they can use them. But you could also use postcards, trifold brochures, one sheets, and don't forget, you might like some business cards as well. For a virtual promotion, decide if you want to send an e-blast or if you want to email a virtual promo kit like a PDF. E-blast servers like Constant Contact, MailChimp, MyEmma, and there's a bunch of others as well. That's one way that you can send if you've been developing that mailing list of email addresses. For the style, make sure it matches your branding and personality. So if you haven't worked on your branding profile, that's something you might want to do. That involves things not just the tagline and logo, but your colors, your fonts, all of that should kind of match. And then as far as a designer goes, you can hire it done, you can barter for it, get a college student to do it, use a place called Fiverr, Fiverr, or learn how to do it yourself. There are so many ways we can do our promotional materials. Now, the other way is for a printed promo kit, and you can mail it to people. You can have it at the back of the room so that if event planners come from one event and they have another event, they could pick up one. I like using those pocket folders that you see at back to school time. You can get a bunch of them for very little money. Glue your logo on the cover and include your business card inside of it. Make a personal note perhaps that you have on your own letterhead, an interesting font if you don't have a logo or letterhead, and write a note to them about what you're looking for, what you're offering as a speaker. Maybe have a letter from your biggest endorser or your pastor in there saying that they really recommend you as a speaker. If you have a demo CD or DVD, or maybe just a link to some online, make sure you mention that, because people really do like to try before they buy. That business card could be secured on the pocket flap. Either it will have a slit that you can slide it into, or you can use a bubble of adhesive behind that business card. An endorsement sheet, like I've been talking about, that can go in the folder. Topic sheets, if you have about your different events, any print promo materials like that rat card that I told you about, or brochure, one sheet, bookmarks, postcards. I also like to include an example of a turnkey event or retreat. And that is when you provide all the materials they need and almost all they have to do is show up. You could show them a sample schedule. Sometimes I even have links to sample decorations, food plans, all the things that they might like. You all are writers. You could even write a skit that they could do, an impromptu skit as one of the entertainments. See, you can provide more than just the speaking program when you are the reason an event planner would want to book you. So we've talked about getting ready. We've got the promotion taken care of. I want you all to think about customizing your niche. There are so many different types of speakers. There's retreat speakers. I love doing that because you get to be with your audience more than one time. You often get to speak maybe 3 times in all, and then just do life with them throughout the rest of that retreat, where you get to minister to them, hang out with them, enjoy their company, and they enjoy your company. And they love having someone like you there, because they like to pick your brain about what is it like in the day of the life of a novelist. They would love to have that. I've even seen entertaining novelists become speakers for cruises. That would be a unique and novel way to use your gift with words. Civic groups are always looking for speakers, especially for their monthly lunchtime programs. So that is another way you could tie something in. Motivational speakers, humor speakers. If you write humor into your books, you're probably also great at writing humor into your speeches. Being a niche speaker for a certain topic, like right to life or domestic violence, or any of those topics that we've been discussing, maybe you're a niche speaker. A fundraiser keynoter. A lot of these organizations once a year have a fundraiser event and they need a keynote speaker for it. Maybe you could be the speaker for that. An inspirational speaker. Now, the difference between an inspirational and a motivational speaker is this. The inspirational speaker is faith-based and will use things from a faith worldview to back up what they're talking about. But both motivational and inspirational speeches are uplifting and make the audience feel compelled to have more joy, more energy, a desire to do more to make this world a better place. So you might be either a motivational speaker or an inspirational speaker. And then a storyteller. I picked that one for us to focus on because I figure if you're a novelist, you're also a storyteller, or at least you better be. So here, let's think about the art of story. Stories do the important work of teaching life lessons without sermonizing. Even Jesus often chose the art of storytelling to teach important truths. Natural storytellers share vignettes that do these things. They entertain, they hit home, they teach. They can be remembered for years. Even if the audience forgets your name, they won't forget a great story if you tell it well. Ingredients to good storytelling: keep the content tight. Don't belabor a point. Use novel writing techniques to create your story. Include all the vital details regarding the setting, the characters, and descriptions. Employ all 5 senses if possible. Craft each word to help the listener feel as if they're inserted into the story as a witness. You've heard people say that about your books, that as they read it, they feel like they're right there. You want that to happen in your storytelling during speeches as well. Make sure you don't rabbit track. Each sentence needs to build on the one before and be vital to the story, or it only detracts and it's not necessary. And have a memorable wrap up to the story. That will be the thing that lands the plane. If you're a storyteller, you will craft your presentation around the stories that you want to share rather than plugging in stories as illustrations for your main points. So if you're a different type of speaker, you come up with your main points, you decide if it's inspirational, what Bible verses go with that, and you decide stories that illustrate or are good examples. But if you're a storyteller, you think, oh man, if I can do nothing else during this program, I want to tell this story. And then you develop the takeaway and everything else based on the fact that you want to tell that good story. Here's a couple more tips. Don't put yourself on a pedestal as you share a story. When you put someone else in the spotlight, that goes better than if we put ourselves in the spotlight. It can just come across kind of off-putting and bragging if we make ourselves look amazing in the story. And when you confess a personal flaw or struggle, that's when the audience can most relate to you, not when you describe yourself as a saint. So be transparent. I know, it makes you feel like you don't have any clothes on when you admit a struggle or confess something that isn't perfect in your life, but it will be the thing that really resonates with your audience. Often you don't have to tell them what you want them to learn from the story. Let them have their own aha moments. When you do that, you'll be amazed at how God works. Some people will come after and tell you what they drew from that story, and it wasn't even your intention. And it's because you let God do the work. And so just be willing to pay attention at the end of those topics, what resonated with them. And those are the things you'll want to use in your future speeches. Those are the stories that really worked. Stories give your talks layers. Just like in our books, we say we write in layers, and some readers pick up different levels depending on their discernment and their insight and even their needs. Well, audience members can peel back the layer they need for that moment in your program as you tell stories. So how do you remember your stories? How do you pick them out? Good storytellers keep track, so it's not just random. You might find some of your best stories on your social media page, in your journals, in emails you send out. Look where you've been telling people and talking to people about things. Those might make good stories for your speeches as well. And you don't have to look far to find some real life nuggets to weave into your tales. And here's the thing, if you tell it like a story, you can use creative nonfiction techniques. So you might base it on a real story, but you might add to that and give it different colors of the rainbow. Audiences remember stories much easier than they recall facts. Use your story as a way to communicate truths, and you'll see that it makes a difference in lives. Your stories will go home with them, and before long, the ripple effect begins. It doesn't die with you. I know when I go to an event and I come home, when my family asks me, what did I learn? Almost always, I will tell them a story I heard and what a difference it made when I heard that story or what my aha moment was. So that's why novelists make great speech givers, because they know how to speak in story. Another thing we need to do is to perfect the elements of good style and delivery. And this is probably the thing that makes some would-be speakers hesitant about becoming a speaker, or maybe not being as strong, because they know that they struggle in some of these areas. So these are the things that you'll want to work on as you move forward as a speaker. It will just help you have a greater impact with the listener. So here are some basic elements. You can evaluate how you're doing with it, or even record one and use these as a checklist, or ask someone else to give you a critique. So how is your body language? Do you stay glued to the lectern, or do you move about? Do you use your arms? Do you use other facial features or body language? How is your body language? And does it match the mood of the message, or does it seem distracting in some way? How about your passion? You know how I told you to pick your topics based on your passion? Is that something that is being conveyed to the audience as you speak? Can they tell that you're passionate about it, or are you just calling it in? You need to be passionate. How about your voice quality? I have to tell you a secret. So when I was first becoming a professional speaker trainer, one of the things I asked my mentor was if I should go to a speech pathologist and alter the tone of my voice, because my voice, especially when I was younger and before I had thyroid cancer, it sounded like a little girl's voice, and it still does, and it sounds kind of sweet. And I was afraid that I wouldn't speak with authority because my voice sounded too much like a young girl who didn't have much life experience. And I was told that my voice actually had a lilting quality to it that was almost song-like, and that I could use that to my benefit. I could deliver some hard truths sometimes, but it would go down like honey with medicine because of that softer touch. But we all need to evaluate our voice quality. Do we have enough variety in the way we talk? Loud, soft, high, low, pacing, all of that. We need to evaluate what we can do to make that even better. And then decide if you're going to use PowerPoint and handouts. I'm going to use a handout with this topic. You'll be getting it. And you'll notice that for me, it's a way that I can make sure that you connect with me. So at the end of the handout is my bio. It has a little bit about me. It has a way for you to contact me. And so when you use handouts at your events, that's a free advertisement that goes home with them, and maybe they will get in touch with you. Maybe they will look up your books and see what you're all about. So don't waste that real estate. Use that to your advantage, okay? Another thing we need to do as we're evaluating our skill set is to think about when we're talking, how do we use our notes? And do we prevent those rabbit tracks? Because one thing that I'm often aware of when I listen to other speakers, the ones that set them apart are the ones that have a skillfully crafted message compared to those who just seem to rabbit track all over the place. They seem distracted, and if they're distracted, the audience is distracted too. So decide if you work better with an outline, bullet points, fully written paragraphs, or memorize it. Decide your way of using notes as a speaker. I put my notes in a 3-ring binder so I don't misplace some of the pages or they slide off of the lectern onto the floor. That has been such a terrible, awful thing that's happened before. And then when I pick them up, they're not in the same order. So I use a 3-ring binder when I'm out and about speaking. At home, I just have my document on my screen so that it's right there at eye level. So decide how you're going to use your notes. Others like to use PowerPoint outline sheets or even note cards. So you use what works best for you. There's a way that you can use a teleprompter on your tablet and fit it to your pace so that it moves along how you need it and in the size that you need it to be able to see it well. That works pretty great. I have been interviewed by a teleprompter before, and the host really stumbled a few times. So I wasn't as impressed with it, but I think he was just getting used to the new program. Now, here's the thing. If you prefer memorization, I want to encourage you to work early on that program so that you really do know it by heart, but not in such a way that it sounds like you're just reading it robotically, but that you have a way to make it come to life. And I wouldn't want you to stumble over your words trying to remember something that you know something different goes next, but you can't remember what it was. That's what tends to cause us to rabbit track. We fill in those spots while we're trying to remember that thing we don't really remember, but goes next. So if you do memorize, plan ahead, work on it ahead, and get really familiar with it. Experiment and choose the method that works best for you. I know I've been told by some speaker coaches that they only recommend memorization. And I think that that's just a problem, because if we don't give our speakers permission to find what works for them, then they will be trapped in trying to be something they're not. And I want you to work with what works for you. Okay, I give you permission to do that. Think about the weak spots that you might have. We all have weak spots and we're aware of them. I don't want you to be aware in such a way that you act self-conscious during the talk, but just so that you can improve it as you work on each program moving forward. So evaluate if you tend to use filler words like and you know. I've heard of audiences that even start counting how many times. They'll mark it on the program. Yep, there's another one. There's another one. And it's just really sad when that happens. So it's better to be quiet for a moment than to use a filler word. Or maybe you've conquered those, but you have a tendency to overuse certain words. I know I do that, and I have to really watch myself. Once I correct one overused word, it seems like another one pops up. So it's just something for us all to be aware of. So that's a place where recording your work and critiquing it might help you identify those words and help you to rewrite that presentation. Make a list of your own weak spots and also be aware of those trendy words that get overused, such as the word literally, which nowadays doesn't mean literally at all. I just try to watch words like that. As we're writing our speech, the first thing we come to is that introduction. And here's a tip. You may not write it first. Maybe you write the meat of your message first and go back and write the introduction and conclusion so that you can make sure that it really draws that audience in for the introduction or for the conclusion, that it really drives home the point that you want to give them. So your introduction is the hook of the presentation. It piques the interest and excites the audience about what they will hear and why they will want to listen. So here's a place where you want to make sure that you don't overpromise and underdeliver. I've been to some programs like that where that introduction was, oh, yes, I want that, I want that. And as they went on, I realized they weren't delivering that at all. So be sure that your introduction is true to what you really are going to deliver. Some of the ways that we use the introduction, a very effective one is to address a problem your audience wants solved and let them know they will take home ideas to deal with their concerns. They will be engaged in the program because they want to be empowered to overcome whatever that issue might be. Don't clutter the introduction with preliminary announcements, thank yous to hosts, commercials about products in the back of the room. Make sure that introduction is the thing that hooks the audience in. Jump right into the meat of your message after a tasty appetizer. Captivate them and tell them what they're going to learn. So here's some ideas for a good opening. Ask them a question. That'll get them wondering right away how you're going to come up with the answer for it. Explain a dilemma. Confess a goof up or fault. Tell a riveting story. That's a great place for the use of your stories. Sing a song. Hey, if you're musical, start out with a song. That will draw them in. Music opens the hearts of listeners. Read or tell a modernized revision, original to you, of an old standby story or Bible text. I say original to you because when I first started out as a speaker, that was about the time the internet was really taking off, and people would forward me all of these great illustrations and stories, and I used them in my speeches. Then I realized, oh my goodness, everyone is reading those same stories and being forwarded those same things on the internet, and they're getting tired of them. Those stories were great to begin with, but they're getting worn out because of overuse. We're writers, so let's write our own story. Maybe take something you've heard and revise it in such a way that it has a whole new meaning. So use your writing skills to write a modern version of something. Hey, it might be the thing people forward next. You never know. Another thing you can do for an introduction is to give a shocking fact, but tell it more like a story than a statistic. Or share an eye-opening quote from someone else, and then move from your introduction into the meat of your message. As you're delivering those points, whatever they might be, depending on the type of message it is, that's the time to use those real-life illustrations. They put legs on a speech. Now, there's two kinds of real-life illustrations. One is the kind that's planned ahead of time. You mark your notes so that you remember the story. This is the time when you can pull away from that podium and walk around the stage a bit as you tell the story and use some body language and make eye contact with everyone, because you don't really need your notes to tell that story. That's something that you can do from memory. And it's a time when they really are drawn into what you're going to say. So those are the ones planned ahead of time. But sometimes examples from your life come to you as you deliver the message. These impromptu fillers are often the parts of the program that will garner the most comments. It's always interesting to see what God works in you and through you to say exactly what will impact that specific audience, custom made just for them. After you share the story, though, don't forget to segue back to your point so it doesn't appear to be a rabbit track. I have loved it when I've been aware of something that just hits me right in the middle of my message and I go ahead and share it with the audience. Sometimes it's humor. It might be that I can tell that they're getting a little stale and I need to freshen things up, and so I will interject some humor. Other times it's an example or a story that I can draw in as I see that it fits. It's almost like God downloads it to me right when I need it. Sure, he can do that ahead of time as we're preparing our program, but sometimes it happens right there in the event. If we have milled around the room getting to know our audience before our part of the program, when we get up there, sometimes there will be something that just comes to us that they might need that isn't in our notes, but God knows and he'll give it to you. So be willing to share that. It will really work to your benefit. Now we've gone through the introduction, the middle part of our message, then there's the ending well. There's nothing worse than ending a speech without an ending. It just sort of fizzles and sputters to a close. Other ending killers are these: repeating the same information several times to make sure they get it, thanking the host, the listeners, your mother for bringing you into the world, all those droning ons that we don't need. I'm not saying be rude. Obviously, you will have a thank you, but it doesn't need to take away from your message. Don't give too much of a commercial about your product table either. There's other ways to bring up your products without having to use it as your closing. Also, don't state that your final thought is your final thought, and then you give a point, and then you say, finally, and then you add on another point, and then you get to another point declaring, and finally. Saying you're going to end and not ending is rather like crying wolf. And again, the audience might start to count how many times you've tried to end your speech. Opening up for a question and answer time, that's a pretty good way to end if that was already in the plans. But if you've already gone over on time, or if the host hasn't requested it, or worse yet, if there are no questions asked, it's awkward to have a Q&A at the end of your message, and it can kind of suck the life out of what you just delivered. So only do that if that's planned for ahead of time. It's quite possible the main thing listeners will remember about your message is your ending. It's sort of like that choir song. They always say if you can end it well, that's what people will remember and it will have the most impact. So it's important for us to end well. Stick the ending. It's sort of like the gymnast who sticks the landing. When you craft a dynamic ending, don't sabotage it by tacking on anything after it. Make your concluding statement and then close your part of the program. Let that last statement act as the final punctuation. Some potential endings: a confession, a poignant, heartwarming story, a challenge, especially for those motivational speeches, a powerful quote, lyrics to a song, or again, if you're a singer, you could close with a song, or restating a key phrase you've emphasized several times through the speech. I have one speech that I have the audience actually say it with me after the first time. Each time I say it, I have them say it with me. And then at the end, we all say it together. So that's one way you could have an ending that they would be rememberable. Sometimes the best indicator of a powerful conclusion is when the audience erupts in applause. And other times, the best response is you could hear a pin drop, silence. Which way will you close your message? And now it's time for me to close mine. I hope this has been a help, and I look forward to reaching out to you soon to see if I can help you with your speaking.